says it starts in 2 minutes.
Oh, okay.
But I don't know if I am live now.
I don't know either. I can't see the, let me see if I'm live. I'm going to my personal page. No? It says live, host joined, maybe.
Let's see. There we are. Okay, we are on.
Oh, okay. Awesome. Hi, everybody.
Welcome to Moxie Mama and our video chat today with my friend Nicole Land from Stay Wild Child. Nicole and I was a guest on Nicole's program a couple weeks ago. Nicole has had this like great journey. We met through a company together, gosh, about like 7-8 years ago, going on 10. And
Yeah.
long time. Just kind of kindred spirits. And I've seen this just like beautiful change in Nicole, and her ability to get really introspective, and she's helped me to do that a lot as well. I talk a lot, or have at least during quarantine, that like I have a really hard time quieting my head. And part of that is the book club that's coming up on the Enneagram as well, to kind of explain how we can go a little deeper with ourselves. But Nicole's been so great in kind of guiding our group on how to do those things. And so I wanted to have her on to talk about quarantine space. Now, I want to preface this. Well, Nicole, you say hi and introduce yourself, and then we're going to dig in.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, so hi everybody. I'm Nicole, and I live in Texas. I run a group called, I wore it right on my shirt, Stay Wild Child. Yeah, and really the group is all about helping women remember who they are before the world told them who they were supposed to be. So dropping the shoulds and kind of dropping some of those old belief systems, and just like stepping into who you truly are, right? Stepping into your power. So that's me.
That's awesome. And, very aligned with what I do, but probably more in like the spiritual realm.
Yes.
But that's why we've always connected. So
yeah.
I am involved in a group through my church, for a little history on this. And we follow Richard Rohr's daily meditations. Richard Rohr is a Franciscan brother, and he does these meditations that are not specific to a particular religion. I think that they're just much more universal and spiritual. Yes. And so he did this meditation on liminal space. So, but just real quick on Richard Rohr, one of the reasons I am so interested in Richard Rohr, I'm talking a lot right now about the Enneagram here on Moxie Mama, and we're doing a book club with it. But Richard Rohr is also an Enneagram scholar. And so he's a man of great faith who has taken the learnings of the Enneagram and how to, dig in on it, the history of it, but then also how we can leverage it to better ourselves and get ourselves out of a place of stress and into a place of rest for our souls. So that's why I was really interested to hear this particular meditation from Richard Rohr. I'm going to read some of it, but it's fairly long. So Bear with me. I think I sent this to you, Nicole.
Yes.
Liminal space is an inner state and sometimes an outer situation where we can begin to think and act in new ways. It is where we are betwixt and between, having left one room or stage of life, but not yet entered the next. We usually enter liminal space when our former way of being is challenged or changed. Perhaps we lose a job or a loved one. It's during illness, the birth of a child, a major relocation, parentheses mine, or a pandemic.
Right.
When we're all stuck in our houses. Okay.
Shelter in place.
It is a graced time, but does not feel graced in any way often. In this space, we are not certain or in control. This global pandemic that we now face is an example of an immense collective liminal space. So we can dig in a little more on this. I wanted to read that first paragraph. One of the ways, this was the first time I'd ever heard this term. And when I started looking in on it, it was described as like when you see a picture of an abandoned town or an abandoned shopping mall and it disturbs you. that
Right.
feeling of like, why isn't it there anymore?
Mhm.
You're either waiting for people to come in and inhabit the space, or you're acknowledging the death of it.
Mhm.
And that visual, because I love seeing pictures of like abandoned houses and things, and they are kind of creepy, but there's also this potential to it. So
Sure.
that kind of nailed it for me, if anybody is still having difficulty understanding this concept of liminal space. So I reached out to Nicole and I sent her the meditation, and I'm like, okay, girl, what do you think about this as a collective, as a society, that we are put in pause right
Right.
now, and kind of how to navigate that? So, Nicole, tell me kind of what you've been doing.
So I've been practicing at this journey for a while. So my personal place that I've been during this liminal space might be different than others, right? Because
Hmm.
I've been practicing this spiritual journey. I've been practicing the pause. And
Hmm.
so that's how I like to look at it. It's a pause. However, there is, a lot of, I would imagine for the collective, I would imagine that there's a lot of tension in this liminal space, right?
Hmm.
It's the not knowing. It's the, well, we know things have changed because it's not where the world was,
I would imagine.
and we don't quite know where it's going. And so it's that in between. And so I know that it creates tension, but I find that in that tension, there can be a lot of good things that can come out of that space. But I've been practicing it for a while, so I
Hmm.
understand, that tension is a great place for expansion. So,
So, how did you, like, when you first started doing this? I mean, obviously before quarantine, and you were
right,
working on this. So, how do you accept the pause? For those of us who are still maybe struggling a little bit with, I can't do this. And I really think, gosh, my heart, I feel so much for people who have no one in their home with them.
right, yes,
I've got my husband and my kids and the dogs.
right,
I have a sister who lives alone. My mom is living alone. Um, I worry about the social aspect of it. So, aside from that,
right,
because we can talk about how to change, to lessen those gaps, for the people who might be in true solitude. Um, Knowing that you've been working on this, what sorts of things do you do to acknowledge or release that tension without letting it overtake, and without just totally dismissing it either?
right. I mean, I think you have to acknowledge your feelings, and there are. I feel exactly the same way because I know that those who don't have someone who is supportive during this time, or someone who is alone, it can be a real mental challenge because you don't have that companionship, and we're social beings, and so not everyone, but I feel like even the introverts at this time are challenged because they don't even have the option to say no, right? And so it's truly what I found is developing kind of those practices that you really want to kind of put your own oxygen mask on first, right? That they,
Mm-hmm.
with sorry, with the plane, every time that the stewardess, or flight attendant, sorry, right before, we're about to take off, they do the whole, make sure that if you're traveling with a child, that you put your own oxygen mask on first. And so it's getting into those real self-care practices that I find helps alleviate the mental stress. And so one of my favorite ways, and one of the things that I started to do when I started to shift my mindset, I have a very, very much an achiever mindset. Definitely have that entrepreneur spirit. I'm a go for it girl. I'm a work hard. For years, I was a work hard, make it happen. I feel like I've transitioned that into flow now. However, I was always that, you can make it happen, right? That achiever mindset. And so I wanted to shift some of those belief systems that I held. And one of the fastest ways that I found to feel my feelings, yet kind of shift my energy and shift my vibration around what was going on, is music. And so I have lots of playlists on my phone. These playlists, I have an angry playlist so that, when I'm pissed, I can get outside and turn on this like super aggressive music and feel my feelings and get them out versus like holding on to them and overthinking them and, letting just like twirl around in your mind over and over and over again. Yeah. Or if I'm in a mood where like, okay, I'm maybe feeling a little bit lethargic and I don't really I don't want to turn on Netflix and I don't want to just like stop right now. I might turn on like a fun kind of dance playlist and, just start dancing around my house because that'll kind of like raise my energy and raise my vibration. And so, for somebody who is struggling right now, who's in that, they're feeling just absolutely isolated. I feel like music can be such a gift. It can just really go in and help you move past that nothingness place. So that's one of the easiest, fastest ways that I can, share with you that has truly impacted me.
I love hearing that. I personally, again, learning this during this time that I'm really focusing on the Enneagram has been fascinating because my personal Enneagram number doesn't like being alone, doesn't like the quiet, has a real hard time getting in their own heads. We bring a lot of joy and enthusiasm and encouragement to other people.
Yes.
And that is what's really fulfilling to us. But part of why we do that is to escape the quiet place.
Yep.
And, I think everybody does that to a certain extent. But as an Enneagram 7, we spend our time in busyness.
Yes.
Because it's like, well, I can't do this right now because my kids need me, because I've got this event coming and I can do that again tomorrow. We're master procrastinators, but it is so beyond the norm. So that has been a huge challenge for me. I know I have this app from our gym with a bunch of different workouts. And when I'm angry, I take the boxing class. And, I'm like beating the hell out of things.
Yeah. My friend Kelly does exactly the same thing.
But it's great music. So
Sure.
it's not necessarily like the angry music, but I can see how that plays together. Like they're playing this great music, but I'm doing this thing and kind of duking it out with the imaginary beast, whatever that is.
Yeah.
And then once my breathing calms down from it, because it's a really hard workout, then it's like, okay, I can be comfortable with that quiet. It's been really interesting to me. I spent the first several weeks and I wrote a blog post about like, okay, week 1, we got this. It's no big deal. My kids will be home. My husband's still working. It'll be great. Week 2, now my husband's home. Where are we all going to work? How are we going to stay out of each other's way and still get things done? We, unlike you, didn't have a big kitchen project that we could take on right now.
Totally.
Which is great timing for the people who
It
are
is.
able to take on those types of things. Week 3 was the Tiger King, and that was just a great distraction for
Totally.
much of the country, because it
Totally.
was like, well, I don't need to think about this quiet space because there's this batshit crazy thing that I can talk about with a "there but for the grace of God go I." And then it was like, once I got past that, I was like, huh, okay, I haven't done the things I said I was going to do. I think this is another trap we all fell into with this. It's like, I have all this time now. I can do all these things. And many of us realized it wasn't the time that was the problem. It was, and that's why. So finally I was like, all right, I now have the time. So what's holding me back from it? And that's when this quiet, and I went, oh, it's me. And in like studying, more of this, and I finally got to a point at age 50 of
Mhm.
leaning in to that instead
Right.
of shying away from it. And I know that like that lean in is so cliche right now, but it's real. And, I started, uh, talked last week about the lucid dreams everybody's having and what they mean. And, gotten some interesting messages. Like I'm sleeping pretty much okay. But when I do have one of those lucid dreams, I'm now trying to encourage myself. When I wake up, I lay in bed and I try to remember it so that when I'm finally ready to rise, I write it down.
Sure.
And that's kind of my personal meditation for the day. That's
Sure.
the one part that I'm going to ask the questions of, okay, what did this mean? And do some
Yeah.
research and interpretations. But, those they don't always resonate. That sometimes it's pretty literal. Like, if you have a dream that you're standing on stage performing, what's the deeper meaning? Well, the deeper meaning is probably you desire to stand on a stage and perform. Like, you know,
Yeah.
so sometimes even in this kind of woo woo meditative space and people are thinking they're going to find a deeper meaning, sometimes the deeper meaning is really super obvious too. And
Right.
that's okay.
Yeah.
Maybe sometimes, and maybe that's what I've been doing for all these years is just working too hard at trying to interpret it.
Yeah.
I had an
Right.
energy healer tell me, stop trying to interpret the signs,
And
just
just
take the
be.
sign and
Yeah.
sit with it.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's kind of where for the first, like, we're starting to talk in our state about when things are going to open, and it's a little disappointing, but I'm also kind of like, I'm not done yet. I've kind of enjoyed this. I'm not done with my work yet, and I hope that I can take these lessons and continue them. So that's another challenge. All right. So, question for you. For those of us who, like, we feel like we're creating this great energy and we're doing these things and we have plans for what will come next based on this quiet time. Um, how long did it take you to really become mindful and make this a habit of leaning into the quiet space?
So I'll tell you, I use the hashtag all the time. We're all just practicing together
Hmm.
because truly it's a practice and it's something I have just started to build a muscle towards. And I am addicted to busy, like you, like a lot of other people are. And so I love social gatherings. I have lots of pockets of friends and I like to get together with them all. And I like to do lots of things. And you're right, I had a kitchen remodel. I did a garden during this
Hmm.
time, and to go garden something I've always wanted to do, and not just I have an issue with time, and I that's something that'll probably always be a part of my healing journey. That I never have enough time to complete things when really I do. I just fill my time with things maybe that aren't for my highest evolution, if you will. And so I have realized during this self isolation time that I have been able to really step in and ask the questions, just like you said that you did. I think that we can get so caught up and we don't ask the questions. And then we don't give ourselves the time and space to hear the answers. And so when this is just something, for example, that I realized, that when I was in my garden, when I was taking the time to be outside and be in nature, that was like a time of meditation. That was a time where I could ask questions. And so even when I'm doing, like, the watering of the garden, or I've been gardening barefoot because I was all about the grounding. And so even when I get in the garden and I'm barefoot and I'm pulling weeds or whatever, I really set my intention to allow myself to either ask questions, or maybe just one question, or allow myself to receive the answer. And, I have times of being great at liminal space, and then I have times of filling my schedule and not giving myself that time. However, just during this last 10 years of, it's probably been more than 10 years. I think I've been, I became a massage therapist in my late 20s. So it was always kind of something in my head, right? That what these self-care practices can do for you. But really within the last 10 years, that was when I started yoga. And I remember in my first yoga class, I walked in and she said, okay, at the end of class, we're going to do this thing called Shavasana, and you're going to lay there for about 5 minutes. And I'm like, no freaking way am I going to lay here for 5 minutes. Yeah, that isn't going to happen. There's no way. But it was showing up and practicing. And I'm telling you, like literally for 6 months, my shopping list would run through my head, my to-dos when I got home, my chatter about, the conversation I had before I walked into the yoga class. Cause I'm sure I was on the phone walking, into the class. Like I have to have a conversation with everybody during my drive, So it was just practicing and not in silence in my car because I love to drive. And so practicing it, not turning on a radio, not having a book on tape playing in the background, just practicing at that silence and allowing myself to receive, because it's in that quiet space that we can receive. And it's just a practice. And just, it's like with everything, going to the gym, whatever it is, when you practice, you just kind of start to build that muscle. And so I have, I guess I've been practicing for this shelter in place of allowing myself to simply be, because it hasn't always been something that's been easy for me. And yours and my personality are similar in that way. And I think that's why we gravitated to each other. Because we both have that, that social aspect, that, achiever, that, you can do more, that girl boss, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But I've noticed, because I have this goal, and I was going to create these workshops during this time. Well, haven't done a lot around the workshops. I've kind of been at a little bit of a stall. And I gave myself grace the other day. And I think that's such a powerful word during this time. Grace, right? Give yourself grace to be. I mean, this is a time of uncertainty. It's the not knowing. It's the tension. It's the, but if you give yourself this grace, then, and I remember giving myself that grace, because I was kind of at the beginning kind of hard on myself because I hadn't written all these workshops, right, that I was planning on doing. It's like, oh, it's perfect timing. I'll write all these workshops. But then I realized I've had some really major aha moments, and they've come at unusual times. Most of them have been in my garden. A few of them have been after a bath. I take baths every day. And so a few of them have been after a bath, like kind of drying off. And I've had these epiphanies, these aha moments, this stillness, where I had some answers to some questions that I probably asked quite a while ago. And I just allowed my intuition, my highest self, to come into play. And I listened and I heard it in the stillness, which maybe I felt it more than heard it, but I felt it in the stillness. And so, yeah, it's just building that practice. It's just building that muscle is all it is.
Certain words that pop up in the practice of all of this, in what you say, noticing. Again, that's where I have sort of been like, oh, here's a sign. This is what it means. And that's when I was saying, like, sometimes you can't just interpret it. Notice it, take note of it, write it down, get it out of your head so you're not thinking about it. And then you can maybe go back to it later. Grace, I think, is really important. One of my big lessons in this. So, it's kind of right on the bubble of really digging in on a couple things. I'd started the podcast, and I was like, I'm going to do stuff to kind of level up to this thing and that thing. And what I noticed in the world of social media and the messages that are out there is there are a lot of entrepreneurs. And I'm sure you've seen this, it's like my inbox, my LinkedIn is being spammed right now by people who are like, we help business owners elevate their business. And I'm like, okay, girl, right now is not the time for me to take on your thing, like someone else's thing.
Right.
What, and one of the business coach that I've worked with for years, one of the homeworks that she makes me do every year is to kind of rewrite the bio of my ideal client. Who is my ideal client? And she has a name, and she has, she loves Netflix and true crime. I mean, she's what Catherine always says to me is, hint, it's you.
Right.
That's your ideal client. It's the audience of
Yeah.
one. It's who you write to. It's who you podcast to. So who is your ideal client? And so I had someone contact me, and I was like, I'm not hiring someone different right now to do service. Like right now, my ideal client, i.e. me, is in a place of transition. So for me to reassess and reevaluate and relaunch, this is not a time for relaunch, a new brand or a changed brand. I rewrote her biography in January. Guess what? She ain't the same person in May. None of us are the same.
No.
And so I think one of the mistakes that is, there's another word that's been coming up in a lot of the conversations I'm having with people you and I haven't talked about, is pivot. Because if you are noticing and you are paying attention and you can get introspective, I think it is easier to pivot without trauma to your quiet space. I have been able to say, right now is not the time for me to do a hard sell on anything. And I try not to do that too much anyway. But I see a lot of, at like every day, here's what I was wearing working from home today, shop my links. And I'm like, we all have pajamas and yoga pants. I mean, I get it. And there are people who are doing the shopping, but there are a lot who aren't. And I think any of us who have any kind of public profile, we bear a responsibility, to showcase. State Farm is doing ads about how they're giving back. They're not talking about how their rates are better. They're telling everybody, we're giving you money back right now. People are talking about, Burberry and Brooks Brothers have retrofitted their factories to make PPE for hospitals. You can pivot that way if you accept that space.
Sure.
And you acknowledge that not only am I changing, but everybody I'm trying to address right now is also changing and maybe hasn't landed where they're going to. I mean, I don't know how much longer this is going to last for us. I don't know if it'll come back. There are lots of theories that we may go through another temporary shutdown in the fall. So part of the journey in liminal space, I'm finding is, okay, I'm good with it now. So what happens in October? I have a college age son who's like, what if I can't go back to school? What if I can't go live in the dorms in the fall? I said, then we'll work on it. And it's okay. I don't want you to spend too much time worrying about it. I'd rather you address how you feel today and how you're handling not seeing your friends today than worry about what's coming. Because if you can get comfortable with it today, it will be easier to fall into the memory of how you handled it last time.
Oh, absolutely.
I think, to move forward.
It's being in the present moment. Eckhart Tolle talks about that all the time. It's the present moment. This is all we have. And, even in like Alcoholics Anonymous, they talk about just the next hour or the next day, right? So they simply cannot get too far ahead, because in that looking too far ahead, that's where we create worry, and which turns into fear, which is not healthy for our immune systems. And so it's being in the now, right? It's being in the now. And it's not always an easy place to be, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
especially for our personalities, we're goal setters. We're
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean that's been our norm for so long. It's set the goal, achieve the goal, right? Create the vision board. And now, I mean, lots of things have changed on the vision board because we were planning to go to Kauai at some point this year, probably around Christmas time. Well, is that going to be available? You know, everything's just so,
Right.
there's just so much unknown. And so I think that it's so important right now to take care of our mental health, because it's what we can do, it's what we can control. And when we control that mental health, when we're putting that oxygen mask on first, we're a real gift to the other people who we interact with, because you just have to take responsibility for you. And then,
Mm-hmm.
you were this gift to your son to say, hey, I know that, I don't know what's going to happen, right? Are you going to be able to go back to college? We don't know yet, right? And so all I can do is, let's be here now. Let's figure it out now. And it does. It takes away that unknown, and you're just there in the moment. So that's
Yeah.
what yoga really. It's yoga teaches you that. Be right here. This is your mat, your space, your time. Be here and be in the moment. Same with meditation, which is hard for a lot of people. And listen, I in no way, shape, or form started out with a quiet meditation. I mean, I can maybe silence my mind for a couple of minutes. Our mutual friend Rashmi can do it way longer. I'm always like, "You go, girl! You're so freaking
Yeah.
impressive," right? And that's not something that I've been able to do. I have that chatter. And so a guided meditation is great for me because it allows me to practice following along and staying in the moment versus, listening to, kind of everything that's going on around me. So,
One of the things that's been difficult for me with meditation over the years, because again, I always assumed I actually only just sort of learned about guided meditations in the last couple of years.
okay.
And one of the things that's difficult for me is I have tinnitus and I've had it since I was 13. So I constantly have ringing in my ears.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think sometimes my own mental chatter is to shut that up as well.
Right.
It's been my coping mechanism because otherwise that sound would drive me into madness. So
Mhm.
total silence is like a more than just the way my brain works, the actual physical, you know, condition makes it really difficult to ever get really, really quiet. I'm sure you've read Eat, Pray, Love
Oh, yeah.
at
Of course.
some point,
Oh,
and I relate. So Elizabeth Gilbert is in fact an Enneagram 7 also. So I really
okay.
relate to her. I read the whole book going, oh my God, I get this.
Yeah.
So when she is in the ashram and trying to learn meditation, and she sits there and she's like, okay, I can do this. I'm going to master this and it's going to be awesome. And then when I get back to New York, I'm going to take the extra bedroom and I am going to paint it purple and it's going to be my meditation room. And then it turns into, oh, I wonder if I could find the sofa on the what, and like it turns into like this whole home redevelopment project in her head. And I was cracking up because I'm like, girl, that's me.
Totally.
That it just, so having someone else's voice. And that's when I started to notice the concept of noticing, because every meditation says, notice your breathing, notice the sounds around you, and they don't add emotion or attachment to it.
Right.
The first guided meditation that I did, that I went, oh, that was it.
Yeah.
I cried.
Yeah.
It was at the end of a yoga class, and we had a 20-minute meditation at the end of it.
Mhm.
And this beautiful woman with this very angelic voice led us through. And I sat and I was feeling very like in my headspace. And so she was like, put your hands down if you need to ground, up if you want. So I was like, I got to ground. I got to, I got my hands are down. And I cried, but it wasn't like, it was really just, it wasn't an emotional cry. I wish I could describe it, and I guess only if someone's experienced that would they get it. it literally was water pouring from my eyes. It
Mm.
was this built up everything
Right.
that just happened. I couldn't stop it. My breathing didn't get really weird the way it does often when you have that big cathartic cry. It
Right.
just happened. And I got to the end of it, and she came over and put a hand on my shoulder. She said, "You okay? Are you okay?" I said, "Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
actually really good." Like,
Yeah.
and so that's happened to me only about 2 or 3 times that I've ever gotten like that deep into it. But, for anybody who can, it's so powerful
Truly.
to get to that. And it's so, it just clears so many of the cobwebs away. One thing, and so I have another clip from this meditation from Richard Rohr, I want to talk about for a little bit. So again, someone who'd reached out to me trying to pitch her services to me. And I said something about, this is a super time to fail.
Yeah.
And she was like horrified. She was horrified that I said that. And she's like, you don't tell people it's a good time to fail. Like, I hope that's not your message. And I said, yeah, it's 100% my message, because again, like Nicole always says, we're all just practicing together. Like,
Yeah.
try it on. Does it work? No, throw it in the corner. So Richard Rohr says, and by the way, this was before I'd read this meditation.
Okay.
It's a woo-woo moment. In liminal space, we sometimes need to not do and not perform according to our usual success patterns. We actually need to fail abruptly and deliberately falter to understand other dimensions of life. We need to be silent instead of speaking, experience emptiness instead of fullness, anonymity instead of persona, and pennilessness instead of plenty. In liminal space, we descend and intentionally do not come back out or up immediately. It takes time, but this experience can help us re-enter the world with freedom and new creative approaches to life. And I was like, fail. It says right here.
That's right.
This is a good time to fail, or at least try.
Or at least
Sometimes it will be successful. If you, and again, I'm not suggesting to anybody, again, I'm like freaking Gwyneth Paltrow, like, don't tell me to go learn a new language or whatever. That's great. Like if you want to do that, that's great.
Sure.
The success that I've had in the last 52 days or whatever it is has been getting to know myself. I didn't make $1 bazillion. I didn't create, content that went viral. But, I am doing what's right for me, what's right for my family, and hopefully resonating with 1 or 2 people out there who say, yeah, I get it. Thank you. Thank you for saying it's a good time to fail. If you want to fail at isolation, fail at isolation. Who's winning at this?
No
Who's
one.
winning at this? And I think putting a message out there that I am winning, I've been joking about it, like, haha, winning at quarantine. Yeah, winning at quarantine is I eat cake for breakfast at 1:30 in the afternoon. It isn't. It isn't. So yeah,
So I've eaten a cookie almost every single day during quarantine, and it's not something I normally do. But I found these little polymer cookies, and they're just fabulous. And I've eaten a cookie almost every day. And you know what? Why are we to judge ourselves over the action we take or the action we don't take? What if this liminal space is just simply to be? And you're right, get to know who you are and listen to those whispers. And, those whispers are spirit. Those whispers are your highest self. Those whispers are allowing yourself to step out of ego that feels like you have to prove anything to anyone. It's your ego talking when you feel like it's your ego talking when you feel like, okay, so Nicole, you should have written all these workshops during this self-isolation's time, right? That's my ego talking, right? That's not my highest self. And, again, I've been practicing at this for a long time, but I've had these epiphanies during this time. I'll give you one that I had. It was a real aha moment for me. I run this group, Stay Wild Child, and I do these episodes. And, these episodes are not monetary for me right now at all.
Right.
I do these, I sometimes will pop on and I'll do a guided meditation. I host some yoga at my house. And I realized that when I stop and I connect, and I really connect with my highest self, and I kind of imagine the outcome of, like, I'm really wanting to plant a seed of love, or I'm wanting to make an impact on someone that encourages them to believe in themselves, to take a chance on themselves. That's really my highest joy. And so that's why I interview these, women like you, right? These powerful women, because I want to plant these seeds that you can do it. And so I realized my aha moment was step out of judgment of you haven't completed these workshops, and realize that you have been stepping into your power, even though for right now, for you, it's not a a monetary reward, but you have allowed your highest self, you have given a gift of, like, channeling, right? Like, so I believe in angels, right? And I believe that we have guides that help us through this journey called life. And when we're quiet and we step in, and everybody's is different, right? Some it's audible, some it's a feeling, some it's a visual thing. But this aha moment for me, and I hadn't heard it before, and it's stop being so damn hard on yourself. You're already doing it. And just give yourself grace and be in the moment. And I'll give you more of these whispers if you just allow the time to hear. So you're right. It's giving yourself that space, and it's stepping away from judgment. We can be so hard on ourselves. I am queen of ripping myself apart. I was for so long. And it's just a practice of allowing that chatter to silence, and then just allowing those words from God, source, universe, whoever, you
Right.
relate to, right? It's just allowing those feelings, because they're there, but giving yourself the time and the grace and the space to receive.
That's really, really beautiful, Nicole. And I think we will all be better at the end of this
Oh, yeah.
for accepting the place of quiet now, and not pushing through. So thank you so much for your time today. We didn't get any questions. I thought we might get a couple of questions. If anyone is still on, and done with our rantings, if you have any questions, I don't see any.
Don't see any.
But if anybody has any to add after watching it later, maybe you didn't get on live, please let us know. What and how have you handled this kind of liminal space? I will also attach the meditation that kind of prompted this hour of our time, and so giving somebody else some things to think about as well. So thank you so much, Nicole, for being with me. I look forward to yoga on your dock sometime soon.
Yeah, I'd love it.
Because it's
Texas,
beautiful.
girl. Well, you do with the volleyball, so you'll have to come over and do yoga on the back porch.
No, not this year.
Oh.
Well, we were supposed to go to Reno this year, and I don't think it's happening at
Yeah.
all. They haven't told us yet, but so. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time today, for your beautiful soul, and namaste.
Namaste. The light in me honors the light in you.